This series is inspired by the Minecraft speedrunning megadoc. Check it out in the description down below. Today we are covering the Overworld. Last episode was all about villages, and today we're covering everything about the ocean. This includes shipwrecks, Mapless buried treasures, and Magma Portals. For starters, I'll go through the pros and cons of ships and BTs as I'll be calling them. Starting with ships. Pros. Most of the time, you get enough iron to make a bucket, pickaxe, and flint and steel. They often give you iron for an axe, shovel, and shears as well. Ships are very quick compared to villages, as you just loot 2 chests and are set for the run. Ships on or just off the coast of an island can be as fast as buried treasures. As for far ships, they are slower but can still be used until going for a sub 13-ish. Another pro of ships is that you get carrots from the food chest and can turn them into golden carrots later. This is the best food that you're going to get from any structure. Also, some ships have buried treasure maps as a backup. The main con of ships is that the food you get is quite variable. While you can get a ton of bread and or carrots from a ship, a lot of the time you won't get anything, maybe a suspicious stew. The amount of food you get can vary a lot. This makes ships inconsistent food-wise. On to buried treasures. Pros. Most buried treasures set you up very well on tools. The average iron amount is the same compared to shipwrecks, but you do get a lot more gold and diamonds. BTs also contain TNT, which is very useful as you can blow it up for fast wood and a lot of building blocks, which is very helpful in the nether. You're far more likely to get gold than in ships, so beginners can make gold armor a lot more as well. The main selling point of buried treasures is that they are very quick. Everything is in a single chest that doesn't take long to find with Mapless. Onto the cons. First, compared to ships and villages, Mapless is far less intuitive, and it can be quite confusing to start off with. Second, every treasure has 4 to 8 cooked fish. This sounds like a pro, and for fast runners it really is, but for beginners that's not going to last you a full run. You'll either have to death reset later or get more food somewhere else if you're going to use buried treasures when starting off. Now that you know that, let's see how to actually use these structures. Starting with ships. This is what I'll call the default shipwreck. It is upright, has a lot of wood, and has all possible chests. These 3 chests are located here. This one contains iron, diamonds, and gold. This one contains a buried treasure map, and this one contains food. This food can be wheat, carrots, rotten flesh, and suspicious stew. It can also contain leather armor, which doesn't hurt, usually, and potatoes, which you can grab if you really want, but they're really slow to eat and barely help, so you can skip them if you want. Every shipwreck is a version of this basic one. Some have less wood, some are upside down or sideways, but the main problem is that in many cases it looks like it's been cut off and only some of the chests generated. For this reason, it's important to be able to quickly recognize which ships are playable. The most important chest is the iron chest. If a ship doesn't have an iron chest, you should always reset. The iron chest is in this section, and you should learn to find this section sideways or upside down by its shape. You can recognize it upside down because there are holes to the side, while if it was the other half, there would be no holes. On upright ships, you can get to the iron chest quickly like this. The second most important chest is the food chest. This section looks like this. You can place ships that only have an iron chest without a food chest if you want, but you should know that you'll probably need to kill some hoglins in the nether for pork. Third and least important is the buried treasure chest. If you're a beginner, you can use this for extra food or iron, but you should know that most of the time the buried treasure will be far away and the best thing to do is to reset. You should never play a shipwreck without iron in the hopes of getting a close buried treasure from a map. I mean, it can work, but it's bad resetting in every level and it's slow. Anyway, here's the general looting tactic for these things. First, for ships that you swam to. To start off, loot the iron and food chest if there is one. Find an air pocket to breathe or swim up to your island if your ship is just off the island. On upright ships, there's always a door under the iron chest over here for you to set up. If your ship doesn't have one and you don't have a nearby island, you can craft a pressure plate and put it under a block like this. This will put you into crawl mode in air so you can breathe. The only ship that doesn't have a spot for this is the upside down back ship, in which case you have to stay in swim mode without a block above your head to help you. You can do this by holding shift as you enter the pressure plate. Make sure you stay half in the water and half in the pressure plate so you don't stand up. However, you still have to be in the pressure plate to breathe. You should practice this. Anyway, once you have an air pocket, you can mine 2 to 3 logs. 2 logs if you can make an iron or gold axe, and 3 if you need to make a wooden one. Also make a crafting table and 8 sticks. Then craft your pickaxe and bucket as well as any extra tools like an axe and shovel. If you have to boat to your shipwreck, you should make a wood axe and get wood for a boat and doors on your island. Some players choose to front load all their wood here, which is what I would recommend, but it's not mandatory and you can get it later. Anyway, back to what happens after looting a ship. If you're on an island, you should make shears if you can to get leaves. Next, get at least 3 logs. You should get up to 9 to 10 if you can. Some players like to get less and play more aggressively, but I still like to front load lots of wood, especially as a beginner. Some ships won't have all of these logs, so just get as many as you can or want in that case. Now that you have that, quickly, if you want to play Shipwrecks as a beginner, you can play any ship you see off spawn as long as it has an iron chest. You can decide whether to play foodless ships as well. If you don't see a ship, just reset. Now, let's go through Mapless Buried Treasure. Mapless is a more advanced strategy. There's no wrong time to learn it, but if you want to learn as a beginner, you need to be aware of the little food it provides, and also that it's the only one of the 3 overworld metas which requires a fair bit of practice and learning. To start off, Mapless uses the pie chart. You should be familiar with the pie chart from Villages, but Mapless uses a different part of the pie chart. First, reset your pie chart by hitting 0 until it stops changing. Then press the number next to Game Renderer, then Level, then Entities. The orange slice represents the block entities as long as the sub-chunk with the block entity is in your field of view. Basically, if you're looking at a chunk with the buried treasure, a spike will show up, and if you're looking away, it won't. If you're in the same chunk, you should always get a spike no matter where you look. If you decide to play Mapless Buried Treasures, you should always be on the Mapless pie chart unless you're on a run already. If you're using standard settings, you should set this pie directory like this. Otherwise, just go back to the pie chart when you reset. Also, if you are playing for Buried Treasures, you want to reset on 50 entity distance. I really recommend you use the standard settings mod so you always restart on these settings. 50 entity distance is important as it makes the block entity spike very big and easy to read. Here's me looking at a buried treasure on max entity distance, and here it is on 50. You can still spot the spike on 500 if you look close enough, but it's a lot harder. Make sure that once you found the buried treasure, you go back to 500 entity distance though. So when you're resetting and you're on a beach, you should check for buried treasure. Not having a buried treasure will probably look something like this, and having a buried treasure will probably look something like this. However, this may be different to you, and you should do some testing by teleporting to buried treasures and seeing what you get for a spike. You should note that most beaches don't have buried treasures. Once you've found a buried treasure spike though, lower to 5 render distance. This will make your spike a lot bigger and easier to read. You can find the direction of your buried treasure by looking around and refreshing your pie chart until you see an area where there's no spike and an area with a spike. Something to note is that the pie chart will generally only refresh if it's loading in a treasure. If it's unloading a treasure, the pie chart will still show a spike even when looking away from it. So you can just look around when going from spike to no spike, but once you've found a spike, you need to refresh your pie chart. Anyway, I hope that made some sense. Once you have a direction, you can look behind you and turn until the spike reappears. Do this from both the left and the right to get more of an idea. Once you've done this, go that direction into the next chunk and do it again. Keep doing this and pinpointing the direction until you hit a chunk where a spike appears in every direction. Once you have this chunk, go to chunk coordinates 9, 9, and dig. You should hit a buried treasure. If you hit stone, then you've missed. There can be many reasons for missing, but I'll go over those later. Once you have your buried treasure, increase your render distance to about 20, and very important, entity distance to 500. Now then, a few tips. If your buried treasure is underwater in the gravel area of the ocean, it'll often stick out like this with some weird blocks around it. Minecraft doesn't want the buried treasure to be exposed, so it covers all the blocks around it. There are many more tips that I could give, but if you're interested, please check out Pancake's advanced Mapless video linked in the description. Now there is more to Mapless. First, you will get a lot of false positives. These can be dungeons, mineshafts, shipwrecks, and things like that. Ships are fine, you can just play them normally, but mineshafts and dungeons can be hard to spot. There are a few techniques you can use. First, the spike you get on your pie chart will probably be different for chests and spawners. For example, this is my normal chest spike and this is my normal spawner spike. You might not be able to differentiate as a beginner, so you can also check for how high up the spike is. If you lift your camera a bit so that only the top subchunks of your world are loaded in, you can check whether the spike is still there. This tells you whether the spike is deep underground or close to the surface. Also, in my experience, mineshafts often look like buried treasures at first, but trying to pinpoint them is impossible because the spike feels like it moves from chunk to chunk. This is because of the multiple chests and spawners spread around inside them. Sometimes you will get a spike in 2 different directions. Obviously, you only want to go to one, so to do this, you can go to 30 FOV. This does the same thing as tilting your camera up. You can also go to 2 render distance to try to unload one of the spikes. Now there's one more thing to talk about because I know people will ask me, which is thin BT. You can use a macro to make your window a weird shape, and you'll see a lot of top runners do this. This is because it's more accurate and allows for faster, more accurate Mapless. However, it can be weird when starting off, and it shouldn't be one more thing to think about unless you're comfortable with Mapless and are pretty quick at it. Now onto the rest of the overworld. Once you have a buried treasure, you should choose whether to reset based on the loot. In general, you need 7 iron or more. If you know bucketless Magma Portal, you can play 4 iron buried treasures. If you're fine with wood lighting, you can play 6 or 3 iron buried treasures respectively instead. In my opinion, it's not as worth it as lava pool wood lighting, but that's not based on any facts and you can do it if you want. Anyway, you can punch 2 logs and make a pickaxe and bucket. If you have more resources, you can make an axe and shovel, otherwise just make a stone axe and shovel. If you got TNT from your buried treasure, you should make a pressure plate or button and blow it up in between a few trees instead of mining 2 logs by hand. This gives you a ton of blocks and fast wood. If you didn't get TNT, you should try to force making shears as well for leaves. Once you've made your tools, also make a boat and doors, and you can leave. Now that's the main section of the overworld. When you leave, take a look at your ocean. If it is sand at the bottom, you should get gravel when leaving the island from the offshore gravel. Anyway, the next step for both Ship and BT overworlds is to find a magma ravine, or a lava pool, but magma ravines are way more common in ocean runs. To find magma ravines, look in deep oceans and look for floating kelp like this. This is where it's very important to use maximum entity distance. Kelp can also appear above caves or ocean ruins, but a good chunk of them are ravines, and they are the most reliable way of finding them. Almost all ravines will have kelp above them. You can also look for ravines like this with your third-person camera. Once you have a magma ravine, get gravel on the way down if you didn't already. Now let's see how to build another portal. I'll be showing you 2 portal designs here. The first one is the most common, and it's called L-shape. You want to find this shape of magma somewhere in the ravine, preferably with obsidian on the sides of these blocks. Once you do, just follow this clip to build the portal. If there's magma or stone or something on the sides here, you can either fill it in while building the portal like this or after like this. By the way, if there's no lava under your magma, you have to find another spot. If nowhere in your ravine has lava, you might have no choice but to reset. Now, sometimes you won't have an L shape like this in your ravine. In this case, you have 2 options. First off, watch my other video on how to build a 2x1 magma portal and use this shape to do it. 2x1 is pretty useful, but it's also more difficult for beginners and might not be worth it for you. If you don't want to learn that, you can also build a portal inside the wall next to your ravine. Here's a clip of how to do it. There are some more advanced ways of building a wall portal quickly, but I'd recommend only going for those later on. Anyway, I think that's it for Ocean Overworlds. I hope I taught you something, and I'll see you all next time.